Good afternoon and happy holidays, everyone. We are so excited to be finalizing the Teams Tip sessions for this year. This is our final one before we go on break for the holidays, and this was requested by popular demand after our previous session hosted by Microsoft for the basics of Excel. Today's session is going to be building on the skills that we learned in that session and enhancing those. So feel free to have a spreadsheet up. You can follow along. Our presenter is going to go step by step through very specific areas so that you can practice a little if that helps you along the way. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and go over a couple of things just to make sure we do our housekeeping for Teams live events. If you haven't been in one before, at any time, you are able to pause. You're also able to rewind. So if you just hover over the screen, you can jump around. And if you need to see what the presenter does, you can go back and watch it again to be sure that you have your formatting of your cells and everything correctly so you can replicate the process. Also, we are posting in our chat. So if you navigate to the right side of the screen, you'll see our chat there. If you can give the thumbs up icon to the post that we posted in there, that just ensures us that you're able to see our comments and you're able to follow along with what we're presenting on today. So if you haven't already, navigate over there in the chat. There's a little bonus portion for you in today's chat in that we selected 3 random prize winners who went ahead and registered early for today's session. So their names were drawn and we posted the prize winners there. So make sure you check it out because you don't want to miss the opportunity to win some really fun swag. So I'm going to go ahead with our slides. I'm Amanda Pritchard. I'm in the Office of Information Technology. If you have not attended these sessions before, we offer them routinely. Sometimes our team hosts them, sometimes we bring in someone from campus. And today we're especially grateful for Microsoft coming and being able to present on this topic to our campus. If you don't already follow us on social media, I put our 2 top channels there, LinkedIn and then Instagram. If you want to follow us, you can scan those little QR codes down at the bottom there, and then you'll be able to hear about any future trainings or upcoming events. And then the #1 question that we always receive is, if this is going to be recorded, how do you get it after the fact? And we understand, we want you to be able to go back so that you can excel at everything that you're doing and have the information that you need. So if you need to watch it again, if you want to look up some of our past videos and presentations, they're all available on YouTube, so you can navigate there. We're also streaming this live to YouTube, which is a new feature that we've just recently been doing. So if you want to catch it on the live stream or you can catch it in Teams Live, we've got you either way. You can use both of those tools. And then just a quick heads up on some of our spring trainings. We've already started planning for the new year. We've already gotten feedback from various departments and groups on some things that they'd like. If you haven't heard, we just recently migrated our all-campus ticketing system. It's a service management tool, and so we're working out all of the testing and the final product right now. And in January, we're going to be ready to share that with campus to let you know a little bit more about how you can go and get help if you need any technical help, and then what resources are already there if you want some self-service to have access to different materials, software, or if you're having issues with hardware. All of that's going to be covered in that training. We're also going to kick off new features in Teams and then information on Duo. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. And I'm really excited to bring to you all a new presenter, new to us. Holly is here, and she is in the holiday spirit. Holly is here to talk to us a little bit about advanced Excel. And she's going to walk through, like I said, step by step with all of us, and we'll be able to learn from her. If you do have questions, the chat is moderated, so just be aware that there's a little bit of a delay as we're getting back to answering those questions. You may or may not see your particular question published, but just know that we do see it and we will respond to you as quickly as possible. So without further ado, welcome, Holly. Thank you so much for leading today's session.
Thank you, of course. I am very excited to be your trainer for today, so we'll go ahead and kick it off. So once again, another hello. My name is Holly, and I will be your presenter for today. And as we've already discussed, we'll be going over Excel Level 200. So if you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, please don't be afraid to let us know. I'll be here to answer anything you might have at the end. If you need me to re-demo something or explain it differently, I can certainly go ahead and do that for you. So we'll kick this off by diving into another PowerPoint that I have here so we can get a little bit of an introduction into today's advanced functions and formulas in Excel. So our first portion is actually going to cover some of our live event controls if you are joining us from the Teams live event. You'll have some controls available to you at the bottom of your screen, so you can play or pause, you can adjust your volume, you can turn on closed captioning and subtitles, or if you click on that cog icon there, you can also alter the look and feel of your captions and subtitles, as well as your playback speed. You'll also have many of those options on the YouTube player, I believe, as well. So you have a couple of different choices there. But you also have that Q&A on the right side of your screen. If you don't see it there, go ahead and click on that little speech bubble with the question mark in it in the top right-hand corner. That way, you can ask us anything that you need to. And we'll go ahead and move into the agenda. Today's class will cover some of the more intermediate and advanced features of Excel. You'll want to already have a strong understanding of the basic features and navigation of Excel and have used basic functions and formulas before attending this session. Today we'll cover tables, including pivot tables. We will apply intermediate and advanced functions. I will demonstrate how to review your data for errors and manage accessibility. You will learn to share and collaborate and also manage access and restrictions to your work. Excel pivot tables are a powerful tool that allows you to review, analyze, summarize, and calculate data in various ways. You can track trends, patterns, compare information, and easily use data to make decisions or create presentations. With Excel, you can turn a data set into a formatted masterpiece. Using logic, functions, and lookup features will provide you with a smooth analysis of your information. To share a workbook, you can click the Share button in the top right-hand corner. If you have data that you don't want altered, that is not a problem. You can go ahead and set permissions before you send someone your workbook. Office 365 makes it simple to choose who you want to share your workbook with and set their permissions without having to leave the document. And with that, we'll go ahead and start to move into the live demonstration here. So give me one moment to go ahead and reshare my screen with you, and we'll start to take a look at that. Let me make sure we have everything sharing properly here, and then we will go ahead and continue. Perfect, thank you. All right, so our first topic today is going to be over tables. So here I already have a preset table that I have created, and we'll get to do a couple of different things with this table. When creating a table in Excel, first we have a normal range of data. Turning it into an actual table set is going to give you a list of different available functions and settings that you can pick from. There's two different ways to make a table. The first one is to click into your data and choose Control-T on your keyboard, which is going to produce this small window for you here. Excel is a pretty smart program here and can assume where our data starts and stops. But if it does get something wrong, you can always choose the upwards arrow here and change the highlight to select your data and then press the down arrow again. Make sure you have this box checked if your table has headers like mine, and then you can go ahead and choose OK. For now, we'll cancel, and I'll show you the second way. We can move into our Insert tab here, and from here we can also choose Table, which will go ahead and give us these same options. So we'll go ahead and choose OK, and notice that our data changes ever so slightly. Now mine already had the coloring format, but if yours didn't, it would go ahead and populate that for you. We can also tell by the drop-down boxes that appear next to our headers. When we have something selected inside of Excel, it's possible for us to get something called a contextual tab. This tab will only pop up in the context of whatever we're currently working on. Since I'm working in a table, we'll go ahead and get the table design right here. One of the first pieces in the table design is the table styles. If you do have a certain color scheme or theme that you're going for, you can go ahead and change the colors that you're using here. Or you can even drop down the table and choose something different. Mine is going to stay green because it was already green before. We also have our table style options. This is going to allow you to include new pieces, such as headers, totals, different columns, and more. The biggest one is going to be the addition of a total row. If you want Excel to go ahead and calculate a total for you, it can do that very quickly without you having to enter in any additional functions or formulas. But let's also say that's not the data I was looking for. I didn't want a total, but rather maybe an average. If that's the case, you can click on the output that Excel gives you here, and it will produce a small downwards pointing arrow right next to it. And if we click on that, I can change it from sum to average and get a different type of total. We can also move over to properties here, and we'll see that we have the ability to name our table. This is really going to come in handy when we start looking at those advanced functions later on. There are many different functions where you have to select a range of data, or you have to indicate some kind of range of data. Instead of typing in the cell names every time or having to highlight every time, you can type in the name of a table instead to save you some time. So I do suggest naming your tables. Lastly, in the Tools area, you can also remove duplicates if you have extras in your table, or you can convert it back to a range. When you convert something to a range, you lose all of the table extras that we got when we indicated it as a table. So if you more so want the design of a table, but not all the extra buttons that come with it, you can choose to convert it back to a range. And our data will look just like this. So we'll go ahead and move on from creating the table, and we'll talk about conditional formatting of our table. I'll go ahead and highlight this area here, and we'll stick within the Home tab. Under Styles, we'll get access to something called Conditional Formatting, which is going to allow us to add more visuals to our data so we can pull useful insights. Now I'm going to add a couple of different things here, and it may look a little bit chaotic at first, but we'll use that to our advantage, and it'll make sense in just a second. So first, we can use the Highlight Cell Rules option. So maybe I want to highlight cells that are greater than a certain number. Maybe I have a sales goal. We could type in that number here and say that I want Excel to fill it in with green if we meet that goal. We'll choose OK and see those highlights. We'll continue. We can do the same with top-bottom rules if I want the top % or my top 10 items. We can add data bars. These will put physical bars inside of our cells so we can quickly see which cells have the larger and smaller numbers. You'll get something very similar with color scales, except it will highlight every cell and will give you a different shade of color depending on the number compared to other numbers. And the last is icon sets. You can include an icon or multiple different icons that do something very similar. Now, when we add all of these, you might be looking at this and saying, this is very colorful and very hard to read. Let's go ahead and clear some things so we can make this make a little bit more sense. The first piece we need to take into consideration is that our headers, total, and left-hand column do not need to use these conditional formatting items. So we can highlight those. And when I'm clicking other cells, we use the Control key. We can move back up to conditional formatting, and we can move to clear rules. I can either clear rules from the entire sheet or from my selected cells. When I clear just from the cells I selected, we can already see that my data is much more accurate, but it's still kind of hard to read. So let's remove a couple of more things. But this time, I'd really like to not remove everything. I'd still like to keep a couple of pieces. So instead of clear rules, we'll choose manage rules. And I can see the 4 rules that I've applied. We'll keep the data bar and the icon sets. We'll choose the ones we don't want and delete the rules. And then choose OK. And now our table is much easier to read, and we have some additional insights that could give us some quicker information. The next type of table we'll go ahead and move into is a pivot table. Now, pivot tables are typically for larger amounts of data, but you can really use them with any kind of data set that you would like. So we have something a little bit bigger here. And we'll start this off just the same way that we started off a normal table. We'll go to the Insert tab, and still under Tables, we'll have 2 primary areas that we can choose from. The first is Recommended Pivot Tables. This will help give us some insight into what a pivot table really is. Just like its name says, the table pivots or changes depending on what you're looking for. So you can indicate the exact information you're trying to pull from your table. So instead of you having to create something entirely new from hand, you can have Excel help you out. So if I wanted to see the sum of the price by the make, we can make a table for that. We could do the count of the mileage by the make, sum of the mileage by the color, or anything else I might be looking for. But it's easy to say that we look through the recommended pivot tables, and I don't find anything that is what I'm looking for, that solves my problem. So let's go ahead and create one of our own instead. And we'll choose Pivot Table from here. Once again, we need to make sure that the indicated range is correct. So take a look at your dotted highlight or the numbers indicated here and make sure that everything lines up. Then we can choose where we want this pivot table to go. Do I want it to go into a new worksheet, or do I want to put it into one of my existing worksheets? For now, to keep it simple, we'll go ahead and create a new one. And we'll choose OK. That's going to pop up this area for us here, and we get plenty of new tools to go ahead and work with. Here on the right side is going to be the primary place we'll be working in. Here I have all of the categories that I had in my original table. I can use this data to create something new. These categories can be placed into these 4 different areas down here. And we'll start to build a couple of things we'll throw a few pieces in here and see what it'll go ahead and create for us. If you would like, you can also choose the checkbox next to the left of your category. There are default places that Excel will go ahead and put certain things for you, so if you needed to help decide where things go, you can choose the checkbox. Well, let's go ahead and put our color in the columns, and we'll put our models in the rows. Let's say I'm trying to find, on average, how much certain colors of my models cost. If that's the case, we'll want to put cost into the values. That's going to fill out the middle piece of my data here. So we can already start to see something coming together, and I'm pulling in different insights from the data that I had before. But already looking at this, we can tell that something might not be quite right. If we look into values, we see that it says the sum of the cost. Well, I wasn't looking for the sum. In this case, I want the average. So we can click on that drop down and choose Value Field Settings. From here, I can pick exactly what I'm looking for, and we'll choose Average. Okay, and the data changes. Now I can see something a little bit more accurate. We also have the filters choice. So if I want to cut this down even more, we can add a filter. Maybe I want to filter by the make. We'll go ahead and drag the make in there. We'll look at the drop-down, and we see that we have a few makes that we can choose from. If I want to select multiple items, we can choose this checkbox here. Maybe I'm really only interested at the moment in looking into 3 different makes. We'll choose OK, and that will limit my data for me. So there are many different ways that our pivot table can change with the information that we are looking for. Just like our regular table from before, we also get a couple of contextual tabs. And the first one is the Pivot Table Analyze. Under Pivot Table, you'll once again see the option to name the table. Very similar use to normal tables, and I always suggest naming your objects. The active field is what we have selected here. So we see the average cost, which we were just changing, and another place that I can see that value field settings. In Filter, we have a couple of additional ways that I can filter my data, instead of just using the filter area. I can also include a slicer. We'll simply choose the make one, just because we kind of already know what that one looks like, and we'll choose OK. And that creates a slicer that looks like this. Slicers also get their own contextual tab, and you can give them a name and a color, and you can change their size. We see the 3 that we had selected before, and if we want to multi-select, we can choose this button here, add some more, or we can clear them by choosing the Clear button. I'll delete the slicer for now. We also have a data area here, which is a little bit more advanced, so you do want to be careful with this one. If you are familiar with hooking up Excel to different applications, such as a SQL Server or an Access database, you can do those things from here and start to pull in that automatic data. We also have some additional tools. If you want to look at your recommended ones again, you can press that here. Or we can even add a pivot chart. So if we want to get even more visual, we can add a chart. And we have plenty of different choices here on the left of different charts that we can add. We'll go with the clustered column and the default style and choose OK. That will enter in the info for me here. And I can change the color, the average of the cost, the make, the model, and more. Last piece for our pivot table is that this also does come with a design tab. So once again, if you have a theme or a color that you need, you can pick that from here. We have more headers and column headers, row and column. And you can also change your layout. So if you want it to appear in a certain way, you can alter all of that from here, including subtotals. And that is going to be our brief overview on pivot tables. Once again, just as a quick reminder, if you do have any questions on these subjects, don't be afraid to let us know. If you're seeing this for the first time and you need to see something again, we'll have some time for that at the end, or the recording will also be available to you. So let's go ahead and move into my personal favorite part, which is our advanced functions. And we'll start with a few lookup functions. There's also a couple of different ways that we can find the functions that are available inside of Excel. The first one is going to be next to your formula bar. You have an FX button right here. This allows you to insert a function. So I can type a description of what I'm looking for, or I could even search by category. So we have tons of different options here. Or you can also choose to move into the Formulas tab, and from here you have access to your function library. You can also search by category from here. But for today's demonstration, I will go ahead and type these in by hand, manually, so that way you can see what the process looks like. Every function is going to follow the same pattern, which is going to be equals whatever function you want to use in all caps, an opening parenthesis, your required arguments, and a closing parenthesis. Right now, that might sound like a lot, but don't worry. We'll be typing that a fair bit through today's presentation, and you'll get used to it very quickly. So we'll start with VLookUp. This allows me to look up information in a vertical sense. So in this situation I have set up, I'm trying to find out how much money these three people owe me. So we'll type in our function. We'll say equals VLookUp, opening parenthesis. Now the great thing, going back a little bit, is that Excel does try to help you. So if you vaguely remember what something starts with or how it begins, you can start to type that in here, and Excel will prompt you. So we'll say lookup, opening parenthesis, and it will do the same with its arguments, what it requires. It will tell you what it's looking for. So the first piece we have bolded here is the lookup value. What am I looking for? Now there's a couple of different ways I can insert this information. The first is to simply type it. We could write down Norman's name. This is considered a constant because it doesn't change, which technically is probably not the best choice for us right now. If I want to autofill something, which I'll show you in a bit, you do need to use cell references instead of constants. A cell reference is when you indicate the name of a cell, and you essentially are telling Excel, I want you to do this problem with whatever's inside of that cell. So we can simply click on Norman's cell, and it will know to do it with Norman's name. So in there it puts cell F2. To move on to your next argument, you'll type a comma, and it will highlight the next section for you. Now it needs the table array. Which table am I trying to look up this information in? This goes back to what we discussed before. If I had created a table and named it, I could type in the table's name here. Same with a pivot table. But for now, we're using a fairly small table, so we can just highlight it instead. And I'll click and drag to highlight this information. and that is considered a range. So we see the C2 colon D6, which essentially translates to C2 through D6. We'll type our column or a comma again. And the next one is the column index number. The reason it asks this one is because we highlighted multiple different columns. I need to tell Excel what information I want it to give back to me. If we said column 1, it wouldn't be very useful because I already know Norman's name, and column 1 only consists of names. But if I put column 2, that would be useful because it would then tell me how much money Norman owes me. So we'll put the number 2. The last argument is technically optional, and we can tell Excel what kind of match we're wanting it to give us. You can give it true for an approximate match, so just something that's close enough, or false for an exact match. In this case, I do want an exact answer, so we'll go ahead and type in false. We'll close the parenthesis, press enter, and it comes back with 70. If we double check it, Norman does owe me $70. Now I'll show you how to fill this information, which is another reason why we need the cell reference. If I hover in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to get this four-pronged black plus sign here. So if we click and hold on that and drag it down, it will go ahead and autofill in that information for me. Essentially, every time I told Excel to look to the cell to its left and give me the answer. We can confirm that Emma owes me $40 and Ray owes me $25. We'll continue. The next one is HLookUp. Very similar to VLookUp, but instead in the horizontal sense. So we'll double click in here and put equals HLookUp. Lookup value, we still want to find out Norman's information, comma. We'll highlight the table array. Now, if you are highlighting, you do want to be careful on how you highlight. If I highlight from Kai down to 25, the names are going to be row 1, and the money is going to be row 2. But if I highlight from $100 to Ray, the money will be row 1, and the names will be row 2. So we'll go from name to number. And then that becomes useful when we hit the row index or the column index if you're using VLookUp. And we know that we want the money, so we're still looking for row 2, and we still want an exact match. We'll close that, press enter, and Norman still comes back as 70. If we drag that over, we get 40 and 25. Next, we'll move on to index. This is going to allow me to know the index number, or where exactly something is in a set of data. So let's say I want to know what's in row 3, column 2. We could enter in that information with index. We'll say equals index, opening parenthesis. What array am I looking in? It's still this one over here. Which row do we want? We want, technically, row 2 in this case. I said row 3 because it's in row 3, but we didn't highlight row 1. So we do need to take in consideration that it's the row in which we have highlighted that array in. Put column 2. Close that, press enter, and it comes back as 250. Because once again, we're looking just in this area, not in the area of the whole worksheet. So row 2, column 2, 250. Next is match. Match is almost the opposite of index. So instead of me knowing which column and row something is in, I know what I'm looking for, and I want Excel to tell me where it is. So we'll type in equals match, opening parenthesis. Our lookup value is Kai, and the lookup array, in this case, It did that a little funny. Hold on there. I put a period by accident. Our lookup array is going to be just this, not the money in this case. Match is only going to bring back the row number for you, not the column number. So we need to indicate one column only, especially because in my lookup value, I didn't indicate two values. I didn't put a name and money. I just put a name. So we'll do that. And then for our last optional choice, we also once again get to choose what kind of match I'm looking for. But instead of a true-false choice here, I get 3 different choices. This is because you could be matching with a number instead of a name like I am. So I could be looking for something that's less than a number, the exact match, or greater than a number. To get the exact match, we'll choose 0. Close that, press enter, and it comes back with 1. Kai is in row 1. The last one for lookup values is going to be the today function, which, lucky for us, doesn't require any arguments. It just does it on its own. So we'll put equals today, open, close, press enter, and it comes back with today's date. But it's very possible that you type this in and you don't get back the nice formatting that I did. If that's the case, I'll show you how to fix it. We'll go ahead and click on the cell that doesn't quite look right, and then we'll right-click on it. We'll go down, not that one there, hit the wrong one by accident. Instead, we'll go down and choose Format Cells. Just to show you that one more time. Format Cells right here. And we'll get this box, which allows me to choose different cell types. Most of the time, you're working with general, which allows you to put almost anything into a cell. You can also limit it to just a number. You might want to indicate it as currency. That way, if you need a particular symbol on the end of something, like the $sign, you can have that automatically. There's accounting standards, same with date and time. You can indicate it as a percentage, fraction, scientific notation, limit it to only text. And then there's also special for things like zip codes or social security numbers, and custom if you need to make one of your own. But for now, we'll stick to date and that format and choose OK. The next part allows us to do math with today's date. So we'll say equals today, open, close, minus this date. Sure. And we technically get the right answer, but I'm more so looking for a number than a date. So we'll do that again. We'll right-click, Format Cells, General, OK. And we get how many days ago that date was. Now we'll go ahead and move on from lookup into conditional. And the first one we'll work with is if. If is only going to do something if a certain criteria is met. So we'll say equals if, opening parenthesis, and I need to give Excel a logical test. What is it testing for? I'll tell it to check the cell to its left. If that cell is less than 40, then do something. That's our test. We'll put comma. We have a value to print if this comes back as true. When I want Excel to print something, I need to put it in quotation marks. We'll say to print the word less if that comes back as true. I have one more. I can also tell it what to do if it comes back as false. If I don't indicate these, Excel will simply print true or false. But in this case, let's tell it to print more. We'll close that, press enter, and we get less. If we drag that down, we'll also get more. And then we have ifs, which is like a more advanced version of if, and allows you to use multiple if statements inside of one. So we'll type this in. We'll say equals ifs, opening parenthesis, and we still have our logical test, except we can do a lot of different ones here. Each set that I have in here will come in twos. So we have the logical test and then what to do if that comes back as true. And then we keep repeating that pattern. So here's our test. If this cell equals the word Kai, which we'll put in quotations, comma, out the word boss. That's our first set, our first pair. We'll continue. If the cell to your left has the name Isaac, print out the word friend. If that cell says Emma, print out sister. If it says Norman, if it says Ray, print out brother. Please press enter. First one comes back as boss, but all the others also come back as their indicated places: friend, sister, brother, etc. The next one is if error. What do you want Excel to do if it runs into an error? So we'll say equals if error, opening parenthesis. Or actually, let's just start with doing it normally to see the difference. We'll say equals this cell divided by this cell, and we'll press enter. We'll drag that down, and we get two errors: trying to divide by a value and dividing by 0. Now let's do if error. Put if error, and we'll put in the same math that we did before. Then for our second argument, we'll tell it what to do when it bumps into that error. I'll show you two different examples. The first one you could do is 2 empty quotation marks if you just want it to be blank. So we'll close that, press enter, drag that down. We get 5, 3, and 2 blanks. We'll do it one more time. We'll say if error, this cell divided by this cell, print out the word error. Something not quite as eye-catching, doesn't take up as much room. We'll drag that down, and we get the 2 cleaner looking errors. The last piece for conditional is going to be and or. The funny thing about these two is that they do take the exact same arguments, but print out something different. So in this first situation, let's say, in order for a person to get the job, they need to pass interview 1 and interview 2. So let's go ahead and calculate who passed. We'll say equals and we're going to give Excel 2 logical tests. We essentially want to show it what the right answer is supposed to look like. So we'll say this cell, for it to be deemed as correct or true, needs to have the word yes in it. Same with this cell. We'll close that, press enter, and it comes back as true. If we drag it down, we get some different answers. Isaac does not get the job because he didn't do either of them. Emma doesn't either because she didn't pass interview 1, but she did pass interview 2. Norman gets the job because he passed both, but Ray does not because he did not pass interview 2. So let's change the requirements of our interview. Let's say I'll give someone the job if they pass interview 1 or interview 2. We'll make it a little bit easier. So we'll say equals or opening parenthesis. we still need to show it what the correct answer is supposed to look like. This cell will still only come back as true if it has the word yes in it. Same with this cell. It just needs to be one or the other instead of both this time. So we'll close that, press enter, drag it down. Isaac is still false because he didn't pass either. But now Emma comes back as true because she passed interview 2, and so does Ray because he passed interview 1. And that is how we use and or. For our last bit for functions, I'll show you a couple of different ways that you can use count. We'll touch on a few extra things after that, and then move into our Q&A. So we'll start with normal count. Count is a little bit different from what we've used so far because it only slightly cares what's inside of the cell. It just counts the cells that have something inside of them, so you know how many full cells you have. So we'll say equals count, opening parenthesis. And we'll highlight the area that we wanted to count. We'll close that, press enter, and it comes back as 19. We have 19 full cells. So let's go ahead and try that again, but with a different column. We'll say equals count. We'll do our letters column. And this one will strangely come back as 0. That isn't necessarily what we wanted because it does have something inside of the cell. This comes back to what I said before, that count only slightly cares what's inside of the cell. Count will only count if it has a number inside of the cell. So we'll see that one more time. We'll do mix, close, enter, and that one only comes back with 7. But let's say I do want to count the letters. That's something that's important. If that's the case, you'll instead want to use count A. So we'll type that one in. Count A, opening parenthesis, and we'll go ahead and try numbers one more time. That one still comes back as 19. So count A counts both numbers and letters. We'll try our letters column again. $19, just like we expected. We'll do mix. $15, much larger than what we got before. Our two last ones are going to be count blank and COUNTIF. The opposite of the counts we've done so far, count blank will count the blank spaces. And I do mean truly blank spaces. Even if it has a space character inside of it, that is still considered something even though we can't see it. So we'll say count blank, opening parenthesis, and we'll highlight the mix column. That comes back as 4. We have 4 blank spaces here. Then we have COUNTIF. Only count if a certain criteria is met. Say COUNTIF, opening parenthesis. And we'll use the letters range this time. Now we have a second argument after our comma, which is the criteria. I only wanted to count if it finds the letter A, so we'll put A in quotation marks. We'll close that, press enter, and we have 7 A's in our letters column. And that is going to be some of the last functions that we are going to cover for today. So to make sure we still have plenty of time for questions, I'll touch on just a couple of more things, and then we'll move into that Q&A. The first piece is going to be in the Review tab. If you are sending out your Excel workbook to other people, you'll want to make sure you check the accessibility first. That way your document is as inclusive as possible. It'll go ahead and check for things like alternative text, screen reader order, and color contrast. If you do share it out with someone, you may want to leave comments. That way you have a way of communication with them. So maybe I wanted to highlight this cell in particular and make a comment on it. We'll choose New Comment. That will pop up here. And I also have the ability to @mention someone from here. But I could type in a note and send it with the airplane icon. Now we could comment on it, or we could edit this. I could press the ellipsis to delete it, or even mark it as resolved, meaning it's completed, but it still technically exists. So if I need to come back and review it later, I can do that. We'll mark it as resolved. Then we'll see under Protect, you can protect your worksheet and your workbook. Protecting the worksheet does protect certain cells, and I'll show you how to indicate those. Let's say I do want it to be the entire worksheet. If that's the case, we can press the arrow between our rows and columns, and that will highlight everything. If I right-click anywhere on my cells, we can go back to Format Cells and choose Protection from here. If I want to make sure these cells are safe, we'll have the Locked checkbox turned on. That way, when I actually choose to protect it, those will be the ones that lock. You can also protect the entire workbook if you would prefer. That way people are not adding sheets or deleting sheets or any of that fancy stuff. We can also add a password to things, which we can do once we save it in our OneDrive, in our cloud, or SharePoint. We could choose Share from up here, and we'll get this share box here. We first can choose who the link works for. So anyone with the link, people in your company, you can lock it down to people who currently have access, or you can give it to very specific people. You can either allow them to edit or not. And if they can't, you can also block them from downloading it. Here you can set an expiration date and a password. If it's someone in your company, you can go ahead and type in their name here. Or if you needed to send it to someone else, you can type in an email address. You can also quickly change your options from the drop-down here of whether they can edit or view. You can add an additional message as to why you're sending this out, and then you can choose to send it. Or if you prefer, you can copy the link. Now do keep in mind when you share this, you are sharing the master copy. You are giving these people access to the original document, and they can edit it at the same time as you. So you can work together and you'll see where they are in the document and what they're currently doing. If you don't want them to make changes to the original, you can choose to send a copy instead. I believe we have one very last piece here, and then we can answer any questions we might have. You also have the File tab available to you, which shows you this backstage view. You can print your Excel workbook, which you do want to be careful on your settings. You want to make sure you are printing the exact cells or sheets that you want to use. That way you're not printing too little or too much. And those are going to be the last pieces that we'll go ahead and cover. So we'll start to go ahead and dive into that Q&A. But very quickly, just in case you need to leave or anything to that degree, I want to go ahead and say thank you all for joining us. I do hope I was able to teach you something new, and I do hope everyone has a wonderful day. So we'll dive into those questions real quick.
Thank you so much, Holly. That presentation was very clear and so helpful to all of us here. We don't have any questions right now in the chat, so I'll give it just another minute or so just to make sure that we don't miss anything while that's coming through. And I will go ahead and I'm going to share a different screen just for our survey form. For anybody that's attending that wants to provide some feedback on today's session. And in addition, in that survey, we're going to have a couple of options to vote on classes for next spring. So if you have ideas or suggestions, there's a poll in there where you can give us your feedback, because we do want to make sure that the content we're planning is what you're needing and desiring and will help you grow and excel in your careers. So I'm double checking our questions real quick. Holly, I'm not seeing anything. I think it was really clear, and I appreciate how thorough you went through those sharing options because that's a critical tool in using in all of Microsoft products. And one of the things that I appreciate so much is that consistency, whether it's Excel or PowerPoint or Word, whatever we're working in, those share options and the edit options are consistent across the board. So whatever it is you're wanting to collaborate on, you can use any of those options to get that feedback and to collaborate with your department. I'm going to go ahead and put the survey screen up full screen for you all. Feel free to take a screenshot, use that little QR code. We're going to also have a link in the chat. It's posted there now. If you want to click on the link directly rather than scanning and putting that QR code, you're welcome to do so if that's easier. But go ahead, share your feedback. Thank you all for joining us today. We do appreciate you coming to these sessions, and just remember, if you have any further questions, we're here to help.